"Sir, your champagne is ready." Felicia Turner spoke softly, though her voice barely rose above the hum of the 42-floor lounge of the Meridian Club. "Garrett Whitmore." 3 didn't even bother to turn. "Did I ask you to speak?" he said, lifting one gloved hand with the casual cruelty of a man used to obedience. He snapped his fingers once, silencing her with the same energy one would use to hush a barking pet. His billionaire circle at table 7, a congregation of ultra-wealth, reacted instantly, chuckles rippling outward like a poorly timed applause track. The room itself felt complicit, dripping in excess. White linen tablecloths hand-woven in Italy, silverware forged from real sterling silver, champagne imported directly from France twice a month by private jet procurement. The air smelled of truffles and entitlement. The laughter swelled when Garrett leaned back in his chair and delivered his next remark, voice soaked in amusement yet sharpened by malice. "Since this black girl is so good at carrying plates," his eyes flicked up, dissecting Felicia's expression for signs of discomfort. "Maybe she can give me financial advice." He tilted his head like a collector inspecting a defective artifact before auction. "I've got $50 million, sweetheart," he continued, lifting a glass. "What should I do?" "Open a savings account at the welfare office." The billionaire cabal erupted. Carolyn Hayes inhaled sharply and looked away, but said nothing. Bradley, the senator's aide, scribbled notes even faster, as if humiliation were an asset class. A woman in pearls dabbed her lips with a linen napkin, whispering loud enough to poison the moment. These people never know their place. Her companion in diamonds smiled too brightly, neck shimmering like a trapped disco star. Felicia Turner stood motionless, breath shallow, body locked in place like a statue temporarily loaned to a museum exhibit titled Economies of Power. A black woman in a cheap service uniform, isolated at the highest altar of wealth, surrounded by white billionaires, utterly alone, but not outmatched. Garrett pushed a single spotless $100 bill forward, pinched between his fingertips like an early bribe. "Here's your tip in advance," he murmured. "Teach a billionaire how money works." The table hummed with anticipation, assuming she'd bow or mumble gratitude. They expected servitude, not revelation. What none of them suspected, not even the polished waitstaff gliding like perfumed spirits, it was that in exactly 15 minutes, Felicia would break open a $50 million fraud scandal on live national television. The massive screen on the wall, always tuned to CNBC Live during Power Brunch, would soon display her evidence, not his empire. The Meridian Club was not merely a luxury dining venue. It was a fortress suspended in the sky on the 42nd floor of a members-only Manhattan skyscraper complex, where elevators operated on encrypted membership authentication. Membership cards cost more than most Americans earn in a year. This was the weekly theater of the elite, where currency converted to ego. Conscience traded for influence, and the staff trained to appear only when summoned, like obedient ghosts, moving between lobster omelet orders and market manipulation. Garrett Whitmore III presided over all of it. At 58 years old, he was the crown baron of Whitmore Capital, founder, predator, Wall Street deity. Forbes called him a genius. CNBC crowned him a market oracle. He labeled himself inevitable. But the broken called him something else. Destroyer. He thrived on hostile takeovers, buying companies already limping, force-feeding them debt, extracting fees like a surgeon harvesting organs, then abandoning them to collapse. Thousands jobless, pension funds drained, ruin packaged as legality. His motto echoed like scripture through boardrooms and ruined break rooms alike. Money is the only language that matters. Except today the language would change, because Felicia Turner wasn't who they thought she was. She wasn't tea, just an invisible server in non-designer shoes, balancing plates and wiping champagne rings off glass tables. She held degrees sharper than their insults. Years ago, she'd graduated from Columbia Business School, ranked in the top 5% of her class, recruited by Goldman Sachs, trained in risk assessment, fraud detection, and financial structural pathology. But when her mother, Ruth Turner, 58 years old, Harlem, caregiver recipient, suffered a devastating stroke that demanded $15,000 a month for rehabilitation, Felicia sacrificed her career to become a 24-hour caregiver. In choosing her mother, she lost Wall Street's attention, her savings, her network, her visibility, and so she wore a waitress uniform instead of an analyst badge. her exhaustion passed as insignificance, her silence mistaken for submission. But after countless Saturday mornings serving Garrett and memorizing more than his cruel jokes, Felicia collected receipts sharper than their stock portfolios, literal and financial. She watched him take whisper-hushed calls about Nexus Technologies, the same company he publicly exalted while secretly liquidating shares behind every televised pump. She didn't know everything then, but she knew enough to start keeping notes. And in 15 minutes, the notes would become testimony, because the invisible are most dangerous when ignored too long. 3 months ago, she'd noticed the pattern like a warning siren only a trained mind could hear. The synchronized media appearances on CNBC. The predictable 3 to 5% spikes in activity following each televised endorsement. The silent liquidation of shares slipping through market noise like contraband. 2 months ago, she had gone hunting through Nexus's SEC filings, not skimming, but excavating until she unearthed the footnotes that everyone else shrugged off as fine print. It was there, buried under compliance language, humming with implication. Internal review underway. Felicia Turner understood the code better than they did. She knew exactly what Garrett Whitmore was doing. She simply waited. Timing was part of fraud detection too. There was one other soul above the clouds in that restaurant who had read Felicia long before this confrontation brewed. Harold Brennan sat isolated at a secluded table near the floor-to-ceiling pane of the Meridian Club. Nursing coffee instead of champagne, observing the battlefield instead of participating in the war. 72 years old, frost-white hair neatly combed, kind eyes floating behind wire-rimmed glasses that had graded a lifetime of brilliance. He carried the gentle aura of a wise grandfather, which disguised who he really was. For 30 years, Harold had been a professor at NYU's Stern School of Business, a personal advisor to the Federal Reserve, a mentor who had tutored many of the wolves now laughing at Table 7. Retirement had softened his environment, not his mind. Unlike others, he didn't just gather for power brunch. He came for insight. And the most intelligent conversations he'd found in the last 2 years had come from a 28-year-old waitress balancing plates instead of portfolios. Harold saw merit where others only looked for hierarchy. Months earlier, he had encountered Felicia decrypting credit default swap structures using salt, pepper, and geometry sketched on paper napkins, explaining leveraged exposure like a general mapping terrain with cutlery as chess pieces. He challenged her with brutal questions, deliberately phrased to sink even polished MBA candidates. She stayed afloat every time. Once, gently, he asked her why a Columbia business graduate would wear a service uniform. Felicia's smile held no resentment, only quiet strategy when she answered. Sometimes the best view of the game is from the sidelines. He understood. Genius is not loud. It simply outlives ego. Today, watching Garrett use a $100 bill like a dog whistle, Harold felt the clock strike. The laughter at Table 7 dwindled like fading applause after a bad show. Felicia still hadn't moved. Garrett mistook her silence for weakness. To him, it validated the brutal folklore he whispered to himself every day. Wealth is proof of superiority, and silence is proof of inferiority. No, nothing. Cat got your tongue, he taunted, smirking upward at the CNBC display, where Nexus traded in hopeful green. Come on, I'll make it easy, he said theatrically, spreading his arms as if he were opening markets himself. Should I buy stocks or bonds right now? Surely even you can answer something that simple. The condescension landed like a corporate footnote written in venom. For the first time in 2 years, Felicia raised her eyes to meet his gaze directly, deliberate, unflinching, analytical, almost surgical. Her voice did not tremble when she said, "Neither." The room stalled. Garrett blinked like someone had unplugged his privileges. "Excuse me?" he barked. Felicia didn't falter. "You asked for my advice. You should sell." "Sell what?" he sneered, already regaining composure. "Nexus Technologies," she stated. "All of it." Before Tuesday, the silence returned, heavier now, metallic, dangerous. Then she spoke markets fluently, quoting figures, not opinions. 340% jump in accounts receivable versus 12% revenue growth. Channel stuffing, investigation footnotes. 1 OK greater than headlines. That shook them all. Caroline Hayes, the only woman of conscience at the table, lowered her fork like someone had declared a verdict. Fund managers whispered, this was not waitress talk. This was Wall Street testimony. Garrett stood, chair grinding the marble beneath him like tectonic plates shifting under empire. "You think you're so smart?" he growled. "Let's make this interesting." He pointed at the CNBC live screen glowing. $142.50. It will close above 150 by Friday. If I'm right, you stand on that chair, apologize publicly for wasting our time? The laughter that followed was nervous now, the kind that foreshadows downfall. "But if you're right," Garrett exhaled a smirk, convinced his wealth was a spell of certainty, "I'll donate $100,000 to charity on camera." Deal. Felicia counter-negotiated. Humiliation would not only defeat him, it would force him to redeem communities he had weaponized for jokes. Make it financial literacy programs for underserved communities. "And you announce it yourself on CNBC, he agreed. Arrogance always thinks it's bargaining with air right before it suffocates. They never shook hands. Witnesses were enough. In the kitchen moments later, Felicia steadied herself against the cold steel. Identical to counters in diners she'd worked, infinitely different from the marble floors outside. She didn't crumble thinking about the bet. She just remembered the moment she'd realized she belonged. It came years earlier in a different kingdom, the glass conference rooms of Goldman Sachs. She saw a flaw others didn't. She spoke up. Analysts froze. Managing directors listened. One beautiful year she believed she had escaped gravity, promoted by cognition alone. Then the phone call arrived, 11 p.m., fluorescent dread from Mount Sinai Hospital. "Your mother has had a stroke," and gravity reclaimed her. She saw her mother. Ruth Turner, 58 years old, the woman who had scrubbed hotel floors and lifted Felicia upward on strained paychecks. Silent now, partially paralyzed, staring with apologetic eyes that whispered, "I'm sorry, never meant for you to fall this far." Doctors demanded figures she couldn't conjure. $15,000 a month, minimum. Felicia had only $4,000 in savings, so she sold her apartment, left finance, became invisible, and spent 3 brutal years choosing caregiving over career, bathing her mother, feeding her mother, carrying trays to survive, reading filings at midnight to stay alive inside. She disappeared once to save her mother. Now she reappeared once to destroy a fraud. The invisible waitress had resurfaced. And this time, she would not vanish. But Felicia never stopped studying. Every night after Ruth fell asleep inside the cramped Harlem apartment, lit only by the faint glow of a street lamp and the rhythmic whisper of a hospital oxygen machine, she would open her aging laptop, chipped at the corners warm from years of use, and pull up quarterly earnings reports. Macroeconomic forecasts, suspicious revenue spikes, and balance sheet dissections. Markets were her meditation, even when meditation felt like war. It was the only thread still stitched to the person she once was, and the only language more powerful than the cruelty she endured upstairs. And then she got the job at the Meridian Club. At first, it was only about survival. Wealthier clients meant heavier wallets. Heavier wallets meant affording her mother's medications, physiotherapy, accessories, neurological consultations, and the soft comfort of ensuring Ruth could smile at dawn without pain. But somewhere between the first insulting comment and the 1,000th refill request, Felicia realized the servers weren't the invisible ones. The truth was, the wealthy talked loudly when they assumed they weren't heard. Conversations flowed like leaked spreadsheets, insider advantage banter, fraudulent revenue engineering, dark jokes about retail investors, loophole exploitation like a sport, pump and dumped confessions, whispered like market strategy. No one moderated their arrogance, and no billionaire relished humiliation theater more than Garrett. He was her weekly case study, and unlike others, she didn't need clearance to audit him. 6 months ago, Felicia decoded his game. 3 months ago, she found the buried proof inside footnotes of a 10Q filing from SEC. 1 month ago, she initiated external ignition by contacting journalist Sarah Wade from the New York Times, a woman whose inbox had high-priority alerts enabled for phrases like hedge fund fraud, whistleblower evidence, and Meridian Club leaks. She wasn't a storyteller hunting drama, she hunted impact. And Felicia wasn't a source, she was a detonator. Today, Garrett unwittingly opened the courtroom door himself. He asked her for financial advice, assuming it would shame her. He assumed wrong. Advice isn't humiliation when the advisor is right. Felicia removed Derek's hand gently, but firmly when he tried to pull her back into anonymity. You carry plates until you stop carrying them, and then you carry consequences. You asked for my advice, she repeated. I'm going to give it to him. Derek nodded slowly, recognizing this was not rebellion. This was destiny. Felicia crossed the restaurant floor deliberately. Notebook in apron pocket, the 2-year dossier the room above would soon wish never existed. Her tone calibrated to evidence, not aggression, precise, analytical, lethal in clarity. She spoke like she once did at Goldman Sachs. No flair. Just fact trajectories. Garrett mocked until mockery wasn't armor enough. Pointed at the CNBC live screen thinking numbers would protect him. Numbers would protect someone today, just not him. Felicia flipped the narrative without needing volume stimulation. Then he tried to finish her with station hierarchy logic. But hierarchy collapses faster than markets when exposed to data-driven counterattack. Are you done? She asked, voice sharpened by years of silence finally weaponized into control. He demanded identity validation by degree. She delivered degree validation by data. Then Harold, the one man immune to wealth superstition and ego illusions, rose from the corner with intellectual gravity enough to tilt stock interest itself. His retirement status didn't weaken his influence. It refined it, like distilled market intelligence purified from corporate blood sport. He carried the authority of a man who molded markets instead of manipulating them. Consulted systemic stability at the Federal Reserve during the 2008 meltdown. Trained financial strategist at NYU Stern School of Business. Consulted policy frameworks long enough to recognize when frameworks were being weaponized instead of upheld. She's not lying, Harold said. Garrett didn't know his face had already lost the battle long before his money would. Felicia didn't exist to serve billionaires. She existed to correct markets distorted by them. And markets don't negotiate with inevitability. They negotiate with truth. I've trained hundreds of analysts in my career. I can count on one hand the number who truly understood markets at an intuitive level, Harold said. Voice slow and weathered with the kind of clarity earned only after decades of molding minds sharper than markets. He stepped beside Felicia, protective distance closing like a vault door. She's one of them. A stirring murmured wave rippled through the restaurant, quiet at first, then electric recognition rumbling like pre-market alerts across the trading floors of NYU Stern School of Business alumni networks. Harold Brennan wasn't just respected. Here was law to people who worship data. Garrett scoffed, arrogance flickering but refusing to die. I don't care if she has a PhD from Harvard, he snapped, sneer sharpening the edges of his words. 1 degree doesn't mean she knows anything about my business. His tone was final clipped, the kind men use when they fear names more than facts. You're right, Felicia said. The room fell, but not into obedience, into focus. So let's talk about your business specifically, she continued. She lifted her notebook, dense with behavioral forensics. Psychological market mapping, timing, tone, transactions, and narrative awareness. The sort of intelligence invisible uniforms can't hide forever. Every billionaire assumed wealth makes you unreadable. Felicia proved the opposite. Poverty makes you observant. She unfolded evidence layers like case files presented at a Senate hearing. Her words became timestamps, citations, and transaction forensics delivered with surgical calm. 17 televised appearances on CNBC in 1 year. Each spike coordinated, each spike exploited, each spike followed by liquidation, not balance, liquidation. She read the pattern like code. Placing a sheet at the center, numbers screaming louder than reputation ever could. $52 million sold in 8 months. While telling retail America to hold and buy, that is not rebalancing, Mr. Whitmore, she said. That is pump and dump. Garrett paled. Those are normal rebalancing transactions. Standard portfolio management? He countered too fast. Words overlapping like a press release written while panicking down an elevator. Rebalancing means buying and selling, Felicia replied evenly. You only sold. Then came the fracture. His. Because everybody's phones ignited at once, vibrating in unison. Like a distributed braking alert orchestrated by the universe itself. The giant screen burst red. Markets can lie. Screens can immobilize experts. But halt orders can't mute truth. Breaking. SEC launches formal fraud probe into Nexus Technologies. Trading halted. The news blared from CNBC live audio waves, flooding the silent temple of wealth-turned courtroom. Suddenly, those who mocked footnotes saw investigations begin in footnotes. The only difference between winners and defendants is noticing before the red banner drops. Caroline stood stunned, expression shifting from discomfort to horror recognition. Not racist horror anymore, financial horror. I just called my office. We're pulling every cent from Whitmore Capital. Effective immediately, she declared. Her voice didn't crack. Empires do that under pressure, not her. Garrett lunged toward narrative control, but found no allies. His donors were now defectors. His mind scrambled through litigation threats like a man recalling exit liquidity terms. So you got lucky with one prediction, Garrett sneered. Markets are volatile. This means nothing. But Felicia wasn't done. She wasn't analyzing Nexus anymore. She was analyzing his legacy. You know who else said they wouldn't lose? She said, head tilting with pointed intent. The CEOs of the companies you annihilated, the workers whose pensions you vacuumed, the families who saw you smile while markets bled. No amount of empire building insulates you from consequence. Mr. Whitmore, it only increases the audience for your downfall. Then she changed the frame entirely. Humiliation. E-T revenge. If the humiliated never knew who they were stepping on. Felicia held another deal sheet. Not market data, life data. Morrison Medical Supply, she stated, delivering the name in full like a subpoena, sharp enough to slice his denial reflex. The room seemed to inhale. The deal wasn't one market weekend ago. It was one life collapse ago. He forgot his victims. She remembered them. She didn't just audit markets. She audited impact. The entity hit harder because it had human suffixes. New Jersey. 150 jobs. 40 million extracted. Court battles. CEO rebellion. Collapse engineered. Not accidental. Lawyers threatened, but prosecutors mobilized. Garrett froze. Not because a waitress talked stocks. Because a prosecutor dressed as a waitress just cited his corpse of conscience system deal. This time, he could not liquidate influence fast enough to mute witnesses. Because entire rooms don't unsee exposure. And entire markets don't unhear filings read out loud at the top floor of the empire. Lost everything. Died of a heart attack 6 months later at 54. His name was Thomas Morrison. Felicia's voice never rose, if anything. It grew quieter, thinner, razor sharp. My uncle's brother, my uncle. And he died because you collapsed the world he built. Silence seized the room like a weapon. Even the rain outside seemed to muffle itself against the restaurant windows of the Regency Bar and Grill. Every wealthy patron felt the shift, the moment ordinary air became courtroom tension. And my mother, Ruth Turner, wasn't just his partner on paper. She was the backbone he leaned on. She invested her life savings, every single penny she earned in 30 years. Scrubbing hotel toilets and changing linens at Hilton Hotels locations across Manhattan. When you bankrupted Morrison Medical, you didn't just end a company. You ended her body before her heartbeat stopped. Felicia stepped toward Garrett. One slow step, then another reach heel click like a gavel. She suffered a stroke 6 months after my uncle died. Stress-induced, the doctor said. Stress with a name. You. The doctor at Mount Sinai Hospital wrote it carefully. Her brain gave up because her hope did. She lost the ability to walk, to work, to speak. And for 3 years, I've been walking into this restaurant invisible, pouring your champagne, carrying your plates, serving your ego 3 feet away from the monster who orphaned my bloodline while he paid me in tips. Garrett trembled. Sweat bloomed on his forehead like a confession he didn't want to sign. You asked me to teach you about money? So let's start with lesson 1. Her smile cut colder than her words ever could. Everything has a price. Even arrogance. This is entrapment, Garrett croaked, confidence cracked, voice snapping like a dry branch in winter. You set me up. All of this. A chair scraped behind them. A woman rose from the corner table, 40s, sharp navy suit, press credentials swinging from her neck like proof of authority. For what? She asked calmly. Answering your questions? She stepped into the center. Sarah Ellison, she introduced, lifting her badge for clarity. The room collectively inhaled. Recognized the paper, respected the platform. I've been investigating Whitmore Capital for 18 months under the New York Times. Felicia Turner reached out a year ago. One of dozens of sources, but the only one who handed me the receipts Wall Street whispers about but never speaks aloud. The pump and dump cycle tied to Nexus Technologies. The insider liquidation orders masked through offshore shells. The doctored valuation reports. The securities misrepresentation, my team verified every line using publicly filed SEC exhibits. But tonight? She glanced at Felicia with almost admiration. Tonight gave me my opening paragraph. Gasps, murmurs, shock pulsing through Swarovski cufflinks and billion-dollar portfolios. My article runs Monday morning, she continued, already typing into her phone. Thumbs moving like she de-rehearsed the ending of Garrett's story longer than he rehearsed complacency. Front page. Headline writes itself. Waitress dismantles a titan using his own filings. Associates scattered like birds flushed from trees. Fund managers from BlackRock were gone. Executives of Nexus slipped out already, calculating legal distance. Garrett stood alone in the rubble of his smugness. I believed in you, said a voice behind him. Soft but heavy. A woman in her early 50s, pearl earrings, trembling slightly, hand over her mouth. I defended you when they called you ruthless. I thought it was aggression. Competition. Not. This. She swallowed hard. Not gutting companies then mocking their children while they carry your plates at a restaurant. Who are you? Garrett barked to Ward. Felicia's retreating back. Do you know who I am? Yes. Felicia said simply. You're a man who just lost everything in a restaurant while a waitress watched. She untied her apron, folded it neatly, placed it on an abandoned table, like a flag surrendered after battle. No cameras, no music, just the birth of consequences. That evening, the video hit the internet. Within 3 hours, 5 million views. By morning, logo overlays on every news channel. The waitress became visible at last. The invisible became undeniable. 2 weeks later, Felicia would walk into her mother's Harlem apartment, sunlight warm but the air still thick with memory. And for the first time in years, she'd speak a sentence born not from loss, but closure. It's done, Mama. A legacy defended. A family vindicated. A story the powerful never imagined would be written by someone holding a tray instead of a title. Ruth Turner sat propped up in bed, frail but present, eyes fixed on the breaking coverage from CNBC broadcast system feeds, lighting up the Harlem apartment. The room smelled faintly of eucalyptus rub and morning tea. Years of physical therapy at Kessler Institute for Rehabilitation had improved her speech, but emotions still moved faster than syllables. Tears carved shining tracks down her face like rivers finally released from a dam. They're saying you're a hero, Ruth said slowly, voice trembling not from weakness now, but revelation. Each word cost effort, but carried truth. Felicia eased onto the mattress beside her, wearing a cream cable knit sweater, hair tied in a neat curly bun. Posture heavy from past battles, lightweight silver hoops glinting softly. She took her mother's hand in both of hers, like she was holding the past and the future simultaneously. I'm not a hero, Mom, Felicia replied, voice catching like threads snagged on memory. I'm just someone who loved her family enough to learn how to fight. The hero part is what happens when you refuse to let your people fall without swinging back. Ruth tightened her grip with surprising strength. Tommy, your uncle, she whispered. He always said I know, Felicia finished for her, eyes misting, throat tight. Felicia opened her leather tote stamped faintly from her old life at Goldman Sachs. A world she'd abandoned willingly to hold this one together. From it, she pulled a photograph edges worn from being handled like evidence. There stood her uncle, Thomas Morrison, on opening day of Morrison Medical Supply. He was smiling wide, dark mustache neatly trimmed, commanding black suit pressed and hopeful, framed by employees whose eyes didn't yet know fear. Balloons arched overhead, futures arched higher. He said men like Whitmore never face consequences, Felicia recalled. That they're too big to fail. That the system protects its architects even when they crush the foundation workers. That people like us don't get endings like this. She placed the photograph on the bedside table beside a glass of water and unopened prescription bottles. He was wrong, Mom, she said softly. We made him wrong. Ruth smiled, then small, real, miraculous. The first genuine smile Felicia had witnessed in 3 years. No pain behind it. No apology in it. Only peace earned without permission. He can rest now, Felicia whispered, thumb brushing her mom's palm. And so can you. 6 months later, the Morrison Financial Literacy Center, founded in Newark, New Jersey, earned transformative national acclaim. The class waiting list swelled into the hundreds. Donations poured in not from charity, but belief. The once-dismissed Waitress had rewritten gravity on Wall Street. After a community workshop held in a modest multi-purpose hall, partnered with United Way of Greater Newark, a young woman lingered near the snacks table, shifting her weight anxiously. She was 19, wearing a soft pink hoodie and faded jeans, holding a sleeping baby swaddled in a yellow blanket printed with tiny stars. "Turner," the young mother began, voice small. "I'm a single mom, 2 jobs. I never understood any of this money stuff. They made me feel." She swallowed, shame familiar. Stupid for asking questions. Felicia crouched slightly to meet her eyeline, empathy warm now that the war was over. "What's your name?" "It's Destiny." "Okay, Destiny," Felicia said, rising with a teacher's steadiness. "First lesson, never let anyone tell you money is too complicated for you. That lie keeps you obedient. Questions make you dangerous. Dangerous makes you free." Destiny's eyes lifted, gleaming like early market bells, but different bells of possibility this time. "No." Felicia smiled. "Let's start with the basics." In a locked news-quiet zone, far from acknowledgement, Garrett Whitmore lay in a federal prison cell, sentenced to 15 years, no parole. The guard dropped a package inspected under Federal Bureau of Prisons protocol, inside a copy of the Wall Street Journal. The headline, "Morrison Financial Literacy Center wins national recognition." Beneath it sat a handwritten note on plain white paper. Words, "Still teaching." Garrett didn't move for a long time. Consequences had finally entered his zip code. Felicia's story spread not just through media, but through marrow. This was a Fate Tales original. In a world that overlooks the quiet, destiny belongs to the observant, the underestimated, and the patient. Empires don't always fall by swords. Sometimes they fall by truth spoken in sepia silence. If this story stirred something in you, explore more tales where fate chooses the invisible first. Like, share, subscribe, stay aware, stay rising. Because fate is always writing, and someone is always watching.